Today is Thursday, September 11th, 2026, 2025. Because I'm thinking it's been 26 years. No, oh wow. I guess it's been 24 years since September 11th, 2001. So I wanted to make a video. Everybody always says you remember where you were on 9/11. This game was made by the same people that made Time Killers on the Genesis. What are your memories of 9/11? You know what? I wanted to make a video like that, but before that, I want to premiere the newest addition to my game room. It's a bit of a tribute to Mark Jackman. It's Mark Jackman BFG. It lights up. Echo, turn on arcade light.
Okay.
This is the Mark Jackman BFG. And it lights up. Okay. Echo, turn off arcade light.
Okay.
Echo, turn off arcade light.
Okay.
All right. September 11th, 2001. It's another normal day at Bloomingdale High School. Early in the day, in the morning sometime, maybe after first or second period, my friend Kyle Whalen comes up to me in the hallway and says, "Bro, did you see it on TV? A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center in New York." Or maybe he said the Twin Towers, because I didn't know what he was talking about, what the Twin Towers were. So he must have said Twin Towers, because I knew what the World Trade Center was, because I had a Apple Macintosh game called Groyler Encyclopedia, and it had little videos, FMVs on it. And I used to watch them. I remember there was a video about how someone bombed the World Trade Center in the early 90s. So he must have said the Twin Towers, because I didn't know what it was. One thing you got to know about America at the time of 9/11, I mean, we had the internet. We didn't have Wikipedia. We didn't have... It was the information superhighway, but there wasn't a whole lot of information. We still went on AIM and went in chat rooms and stuff. We had no sense of geography, no sense of foreign policy, no sense of, at least us kids, you know. We had no idea what was going on in the world. You know, you hear about a plane crash every once in a while, and it's make you afraid to fly. But then I was beginning to realize it was a big deal. This huge tower was hit by a plane. So in class, for the whole rest of the day, our teachers put on the news. And we watched it on TV. And then all of a sudden, the second plane hits live on TV into the other tower. And that's when we knew something fishy was going on. Something was up. This was not an accident. We'd had the Oklahoma City bombing. So there was domestic terrorism. We were used to that in the United States. But nothing on this scale. especially once the towers fell, which was, I don't know, it was sometime that day. And then you started hearing about people jumping off the towers, and it just was absolutely brutal. And everyone was freaked out. I remember I actually had a cell phone back then. It was a Sony Ericsson. My dad got it because he was scared of me driving, and he wanted to be able to get a hold of me at all times. But of course, you had to leave your phone in your car at that time. So I remember getting in my car, listening to the messages, driving my friend Corey home, and I had a message from my dad on the answering machine, and he said, "Richard, come home as soon as possible. America's under attack. Nowhere is safe." And my friend Corey thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever heard in his life. But that pretty much said it all right there, because from that moment on, everyone thought there was going to be another attack. There was like people were talking about how they're going to have crop dusters spray poison all over the place, and there's anthrax being mailed in the mail all the time, and just waiting for another attack. Everyone was completely shell shocked by it. I remember somehow that very day, my dad had a subscription to Time magazine, and they delivered a mini magazine about the attacks that day. So they were able to, like, a nationally distributed magazine was able to deliver that day pictures of the 9/11 attacks. It was crazy. Um, but pretty much immediately afterward, like the next day, the whole country changed. We went from a country that was like freedom of speech, do whatever you want, burn the flag, who cares? This is freedom of speech. We have a free country. To patriotic jingoism, the the crush of any form of dissent. They're playing like Metallica's Search and Destroy with like clips of George Bush talking about 9/11 attacks, like, "We will never surrender, we will never quit, these colors don't run." um, any person that looked Middle Eastern or East Asian were susceptible of being spit on, even though no one knew the difference between a Muslim, an Arab, a Persian, a Sikh, and Pakistani, and Indian. It's pretty much anyone that looked like that um, was susceptible to being harassed, attacked, spit on. Everyone was like, "We need to bomb the shit out of these countries. We need to," because somehow they already knew that it was Osama bin Laden that very day. They'd already figured it out somehow. Um, Everyone was in a war frenzy. Everyone was ready to go to war and bomb everyone. And I guess that's why I don't have such a black and white opinion on the current situation in Israel and Palestine, because I remember when our country had like 3,000 people killed, just like Israel did a couple years ago, and went into a war fervor. Um, but yeah, I remember that very day. My dad, he was a lieutenant colonel in the military, retired. He said, just wait. Somehow they're going to connect this to Iraq. And we're going to have another war in Iraq. Which seemed crazy to me at the time, but he was right. Yeah, I remember, everyone already hated George Bush because he stole the election. That's what everyone believed. There was all these issues with like dangling chads in Florida and stuff like that. Um, he wasn't even declared president until months after the election because they were still recounting all the votes. His brother Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida. So it all really came down to Florida. Um, of figuring out who actually won this election, but everybody believed that George Bush stole the election. Everybody knew he was skull and bones, and nobody trusted him. But he was like, "You're either with us or you're with the terrorists." So, and he'd always talk about, well, the terrorists hate our freedoms. But oddly enough, it was like 9/11 was used as the excuse to take all our freedoms away. I started the Department of Homeland Security almost immediately. Everyone was afraid of getting their phones tapped. Everybody was afraid that everybody was being spied on. We had a whole, it was a whole, became a whole culture of being spied on, which I've grown numb to. People born after 9/11 don't know any other way but that. But yeah, in the name of freedom, we had all our freedoms taken away. That's why people love the 90s so much and have so much nostalgia for the 90s who are my age, because the 90s were the last time that we had that sense of freedom. Um, Nowadays, I'm not so much bothered about the government spying on me as I am about the algorithm spying on me, giving me curated advertisements on social media. It's like, are they listening to my phone? Yes, they are, but it's computers listening to your phone. But after 9/11, in the early 2000s in Homeland Security, computers weren't that advanced. So everybody thought that we had some kind of special, I don't know, NSA spying on every single one of us through our phones being tapped. That was the overall consensus of the American people. And if you question that, you were outcasts. Remember my friend Emily wearing a propaganda shirt because we went to the concert the year before, and it was the album cover, Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. And I remember one of the ladies who worked in the front office of our school saying, "Oh, that's not very patriotic," because that's the way people were thinking back then. They're, it was, it was, it's jingoism, which is an extreme form of patriotism. It was, I mean, you had to see it to believe it. It was, I mean, it was a gut reaction to watching people being slaughtered on TV, but it was way overkill. So everybody was just really confused. Even in Tampa, Florida, there was a like a few days later, some kid flew a single engine Cessna into the SunTrust skyscraper in downtown Tampa, like his own miniature 9/11 attack. Um, so it was just a lot of crazy shit going on. Um, and my generation were at the age of joining the military. I was a junior in high school. Joined the military when you're 18, so I had a whole lot of friends join the military. So yeah, we go through about a year of that. Everybody's a nervous wreck. Nobody knows what the hell to make of the whole situation. We're just all afraid that we're going to get anthrax in the mail. Um, Massive censorship, lots of stuff. I mean, there was this TV show called That's My Bush, making fun of George Bush, on Comedy Central, made by South Park guys. That was canceled immediately after 9/11. Anything criticizing George Bush was persona non grata from that point on. Anything criticizing the government. That was a big phrase. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. A year later, I'm at the State Theater in St. Petersburg, Florida, at the Subhuman show, the 80s British punk band. They had they had um, some kind of deal with Fat Records, and they were recording a live album for Fat Records. I'm going on tour, and I'll never forget the lead singer Dick goes, "This song's about being afraid. The CIA blew up the World Trade Center, but I'm not afraid." And that was the first inklings I heard of the 9/11 conspiracy theories, which seemed to kind of take the nation by storm. From that point on, we became kind of conspiracy theory nation, especially on the internet. I'd say up until around the time of the first Trump presidency and COVID and all that kind of stuff, and cancellation of Alex Jones and everything like that. They pretty much put the kibosh on any talk of conspiracy theories. Um, I'm even afraid to even bring up conspiracy theories on this channel. I don't want this video getting taken down. So I'm just saying this from a journalistic standpoint. Yeah, so Dick from the Subhuman said that the CIA blew up the World Trade Center. The Subhuman show. And that night, I picked up a zine. That's what we used to have in the punk scene back in the day when I was a kid. Zines. It was blogs, but on paper. Punks made their own little newspapers or magazines, interviewed other punk bands and stuff like that in it. There was an interview with Dick from the Subhumans, and he was talking about this book, Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center Conspiracy. And it's by a guy named David Icke. And he had a theory of reptilian entities being the secret rulers of the world. Somehow he tied in 9/11 to being having something to do with blood drinking lizard people. And I'd never heard anything like that in my life. I was into conspiracy theories. I read Behold a Pale Horse by Tony something. Or no, Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper and Empower the People by Tony Brown. So I knew about like Freemasons and Illuminati and all that kind of stuff. Blood drinking lizard people, that was a whole new thing for me. But I got into the whole blood drinking lizard people thing. And taking mushrooms, I connected it somehow to Super Mario World, and basically it was that train of thought that led me into psychosis in my late teen years. But we were just also shell shocked. Words cannot describe. Jesus, this game was hard. Words cannot describe the damage that the 9/11 attacks did to our sheltered American psyches. I'm just glad that I wasn't one of the unfortunate people that just because I looked Middle Eastern that I was subject to horrible cruelty, kind of like the way they put all the Japanese Americans in a Japanese internment camp. They opened Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, started locking people away in that, torturing them. Remember, I had a Indian kid I was friends with. Indian, you know, they're Hindu there mostly in India. But his parents had to put up a huge American flag in his yard just to make sure everyone knew they weren't terrorists. But yeah, my dad was right. It led to the war in Iraq. Countless people, my friends, that were supposedly punk and anti-authoritarian and everything like that. Everybody was punk back then, but it was pop punk. It was, I mean, it was almost apolitical, but they all joined the military, bragged about their kill counts. Fat Mike from NoFX put out the War on Errorism and started the Not My President movement, punk voter, getting everybody to get up to vote. Let's talk about that. Yeah, the pop punk sellout distributed by Sony CD. Fat Mike tried to become punk again after years of singing about green corn and new boobs. But he started the punk voter movement to get everyone to go out and vote to get George Bush out of office, rock against Bush. And I can see where he was coming from because I was at the Ralph Nader rally in the year 2000, right before the election. Jello Biafra spoke, Patti Smith spoke. Um, everybody, all the punks wanted Ralph Nader to be the president. And I can't help but think this was in Florida. Florida's what the election came down to. Um, if Ralph Nader hadn't run, would Al Gore would have won and 9/11 never happened, Homeland Security never happened, and the Iraq War never happened, and the Afghanistan War would never happen. 20-year wars. But the problem with the punk voter movement is everybody knew this. The next candidate running against George W. Bush was John Kerry, who just so also happened to be in the Skull and Bones fraternity at Yale, the same Illuminati fraternity that George W. Bush was in. So it was a level of paranoia, and the whole thing is rigged, the whole thing is set up. That we were just the young people, the young millennials of America. We didn't know what to think of it. Propaganda made fun of Fat Mike's little pet project, and they were kicked off a Fat Wreck for that. Um, but the whole rock against Bush punk voter. I mean, it was a good sentiment, but for me, for Fat Mike, the king of sellout punk at the time, it seemed a little bit too little, too late for me. And by that time in my punkhood, I didn't even like Fat Wreck anymore. They were starting to put out, well, I guess Epitaph more was starting to put out more emo scene shit, but Fat Wreck punk and the Epitaph punk was cool in like the mid 90s. by the early 2000s, it was already passe. And that's why everybody hated against me when they signed to Fat Wreck, because it was pretty much the most uncool thing a punk band could do. But they were just trying to get Bush out of office. Um, but it didn't work. He stayed in office another 4 years. And as YouTube and video streaming started to emerge around 2005, all these 9/11 conspiracy videos started popping up. 9/11 loose change. Um, Alex Jones just became a huge thing. Even though from the moment I saw Alex Jones, I think it was my freshman year of college, I saw the InfoWars website. It gave me an uneasy feeling, like a gut instinct that something was a little bit too commercial about this. This is a little bit too flashy. This just, maybe he's like a government agent or something. That being said, even though he's canceled and everything, he's a pariah. The years I spent listening to Alex Jones, watching him on YouTube, I had some of the best laughs I've ever heard in my entire life. It's some of the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life. I still watch him from time to time. I have the Rumble app, but he's grown more conservative over the years, and like I said, the whole MAGA movement kind of and QAnon and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of the death nail of the early 2000s. COVID, of course, with all the anti-vaxxing conspiracies. It's kind of the death nail of any public support of any form of conspiracy theories whatsoever, which I think is a dangerous thing because there are conspiracies out there. JFK was not shot by Lee Harvey Oswald. The Gulf of Tonkin didn't happen, but somehow the Vietnam War did. But I think our minds naturally create conspiracies, just like the same way if you look onto like a piece of wood and our minds automatically find faces in that piece of wood because our eyes are programmed to find faces in things. Like, for instance, yesterday, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, shot in the neck in Utah. Conservative commentary guy. I didn't know who he was, and then I figured out he was the guy Cartman was making fun of on South Park. But I even found myself thinking, like, okay, he was shot in the neck. There's some video that just emerged as well of a girl from Ukraine being stabbed in the neck, 2 neck wounds. The first thing that was asked to Charlie Kirk, or the thing that was asked to Charlie Kirk right before he was shot, was how many mass shootings have been in this country, and then pop, he gets shot in the neck. This seems like some kind of psyop. This is weird. And I think that's just what our brains naturally do to try to make sense of a situation. Look for patterns the same way we find faces in wood. And due to my desire to keep my channel, I'm not going to go into any details or give my opinions on the 9/11 attacks. But what I will say is there was a whole lot of patterns, a whole lot of coincidences, a whole lot of things that led a whole lot of people to question the official narrative. Um, and I'll just leave it at that. But you can't mention the 9/11 story without the 2000s 2010 backlash of conspiracy theories that emerged. I remember even being in New York, and me and my friend Rustin were watching a 9/11 conspiracy documentary, and then I got an email from a random person sending me another video of a 9/11 conspiracy video. And we're like, somebody's fucking watching us. That was the feeling we got from 9/11 until everyone, Facebook, Instagram, everybody was looking at us, watching us. AI started watching us. That was the feeling we had. Somebody's watching us. Well, in conclusion, I guess this just begs the question: what is the legacy of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City? My answer to that is, for the people of my generation at least, what isn't the legacy of the September 11th attacks? We went from the post-industrial age to the digital information age. And it coincided with what is now, I'd say, the greatest political divide in American history since the Civil War. Whoever did those attacks, I think that their goal was to kill America. And I find myself every day wondering how much longer is this country going to last? I remember traveling to France 2006, 2007, after the Iraq War. I remember one of the French guys saying, "You know you are the devil, right?" wanted to say, well, we saved your ass in Normandy, but just showed him the all-seeing eye of Osiris on the back of the $1 bill. Somehow he attributed that to me being anti-Semitic. I don't know how that's anti-Semitic, but I do remember even like right after it happened, there were people blaming the attacks on the Israeli occupation of Palestine. There was a girl in my class, I didn't even know she was half Jewish. She became very upset about that because I didn't know anything about Judaism except for like the Hanukkah song by Adam Sandler before that. I didn't know what Israel was. I didn't know what Palestine was. Nobody knew shit. Nobody had any idea about the world stage. But after the information age, the digital age, we have a little bit more understanding of what's going on in the world. Everything is on the world stage now. And you could say that that's because I'm older, and the older you get, the more aware of the world you get. But I don't think so. I think if I was 40 years old in 1996, there's a good chance I still wouldn't know shit about the world because there was no way to find out except to go to the library and look in the encyclopedia. But I think the most important thing to remember about 9/11 is that inside those World Trade Center towers and inside those airplanes, those were real people. Real people just going to work or trying to go on a plane, and their lives were ended in a very violent and tragic way. And they shouldn't be forgotten into history. That's what people should remember when they say never forget. Never forget the lives that were lost. And this might sound controversial, but never forget the innocent Afghanistan people, civilians that were killed. Never forget the innocent Iraqi children that were killed for no reason. Never forget the people that were imprisoned and tortured in Guantanamo Bay. It's just a really sad situation. And I've had a lot of friends that were in the Iraq War that killed themselves. Because of the effect the war had on them, PTSD and stuff. So In the fog of war, so to speak, after 9/11, all what people seemed to want to talk about was getting revenge on the enemy. Um, but I think a more important thing to do is honor the memory of those who were slain in those horrible attacks. New Yorkers are a strong people. They're good people. I lived in New York for a few years. It's a great place. Great pizza. Great cannolis. Um, my cat's from New York. Um, don't forget the lives of the brave firefighters that gave their lives trying to rescue the people in the Twin Towers. Um, linguist, philosopher, dissident, anarchist, intellectual Noam Chomsky, when asked whether the 9/11 attacks were a conspiracy or not, gave an answer that makes a lot of sense to me. He said, "Does it really matter? The damage is done. We live in a surveillance state. We're in a state of perpetual war. Thousands of lives were lost in the attack. The country was changed forever. Does it really matter who did it? The damage is done." And that's the truth right there. Gotta love Noam Chomsky. I think he's like 100 years old now. He used to go on Democracy Now all the time, but past couple years I haven't seen him much. Um, last thing I saw him say was people should be getting vaccinated for COVID. So, I mean, COVID, what did it kill? 6 million people? That's a whole new can of worms. That's Gen Z's 9/11. And I'm still in that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. That hasn't even sunk in yet. That was the big kahuna 20 years later. So, as far as the way it's changed me as a person and affected my life, I'm a lot more isolated. And I live in a state of escapism. Just sitting here playing video games all day. the amount of money I've sunk into the Switch 2 system. They made everybody think that $500 for a Switch 2 was a big deal. It's not even the beginning. You got to get the Pro controller. You got to get an extra set of Joy-Cons. You got to get the camera. You got to get the $80 games. You got to get the Nintendo Switch Online. You're looking at like over $1,200 just to get the basic package of what you need the Switch 2 to do. It's like you buy a computer, but then you got to buy the monitor, you got to buy the printer, you got to buy the keyboard, you got to buy the modem. Oh, I am digressing. It's the point of being offensive. But yeah, I've dealt with this through escapism. I'm in my own little world. But after 9/11, a distrust, tribalism, and a gradual descent into isolation began. And slowly turned me into the miserable human being I stand as today. Um, Yet still, I'm still alive. I haven't been killed in a terrorist attack or a mass shooting or government assassination or I was falsely arrested for a bomb threat my high school senior year just because I stood out as different. Try to blame it on me. There's bomb threat after bomb threat after bomb threat after 9/11. I guess something that happened a few years earlier, Columbine, set off the whole mass shooting craze. But I don't like living in a world of bombings, terrorist attacks, and mass shootings. But that's since the late 90s, early 2000s. That's the world we live in. So I guess that's why I'm sitting here playing a game I used to play with my grandpa in Mississippi in the early 90s. So I just want to go back to that time. But with our phones and with our streaming devices, the things we've traded for our privacy and our freedom, I guess, is the world we live in now. I guess say what you want about it. It's definitely not boring. And every single day, you wake up and hear the rundown in the news on your Amazon Alexa or your Twitter or your YouTubes. You never know what you're going to expect. Um, But I miss those days where, oh wow, there's this new movie Jurassic Park in the theater. Oh, did you get that new Rage Against the Machine CD for $15 at Blockbuster Music? Let's go ride bikes. Let's go bowling. Let's go to the skating rink. Let's go to the arcade. That's the world I miss. And that's the world I'll never see again. So this video is dedicated to the lives lost on September 11th, 2001, and all the lives affected by it afterward. Hope you enjoyed this little tribute. Take care of yourself and each other. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.